knew then I had to get out of this marriage. I just couldn't possibly stay in it. I never thought of it before until I had the dream, and then I knew out.
The Freud family moved to Vienna when Sigmund was 4 years old. He was born in Moravia in 1856, the eldest of 7 children of Jacob, a Jewish wool merchant, and his wife Amelia. The Freuds were poor during most of Freud's youth, but always sacrificed to give him the best possible education. Young Sigmund was an exceptionally gifted student.
His parents think that Freud's work is the most, little Sigmund's work is the most important thing that goes on in the apartment. Everybody else be quiet. No piano, no noise. Little Sigmund is working.
The brilliant young Freud went to the University of Vienna and trained as a neurologist. After school, he began a career in research, but lack of money forced him to start a small medical practice. At the age of 30, he married Martha Bernays, the daughter of a distinguished German Jewish family. In the Victorian Austria of Freud's youth, psychology was still in its infancy. Mental illness was thought to be caused by a malfunction in a body fluid. Psychoanalysis did not exist. Dreams had only just begun to lose their mythic quality as messages from the gods or warnings of impending disaster. Times have changed, yet reports of premonitory dreams are still common.
I had this dream not long ago that reveals to me the death of my mother. I was just dreaming that I was in the church with my mother, and we were singing and glorifying the Lord. And suddenly, there was a man covered with blood. He burst into the church, and everybody was running. I was running. To my greatest surprise, my mother was standing, waiting to know what was going on with this man. And I was so frightened, so scared from the dream, that I opened my eyes and I woke up. And 5 days later, I received a phone call that my mother had an accident and she died.
By the end of the 19th century, consciousness began to be seen as a rational process. It was also believed that behind all psychological functioning, there had to be a physical origin, a biological cause for every mental effect. Freud, too, viewed the human brain in mechanical terms, somewhat like a steam engine. He saw the brain as a complex neural network in which neurons build up electrical charge and, as a result, require discharging. Freud envisioned that dreams occurred during discharge.
Freud comes at a period in the history of Europe where there has been this tremendous successful liberalism, this great industrial revolution, the apparent triumph of science and ideas, and at the same time, this increasingly powerful feeling that something is amiss, that things aren't working right, that aggression, violence, and hatred are still major issues.
The late 19th century brought an uneasy mixture of hard science and speculation to attempts to understand the mind.
I was so helpless.
A young Austrian woman named Anna O. had been seeing Dr. Joseph Breuer for severe hysteria. She suffered from speech disorders, found food repulsive, and experienced frightening visions. Breuer tried hypnosis and discovered that when in trance, Anna recalled traumatic memories and her symptoms disappeared. The talking cure had been invented. Breuer recounted the case to his friend and protege, Dr. Sigmund Freud, who was fascinated. After 14 years of collaboration, the two men published Studies on Hysteria. From this work emerged the field of psychoanalysis. After publication, Freud increasingly focused on the sexual nature of the psyche. Breuer and Freud parted ways 1 year after their book came out, the first of many Freud friendships to end bitterly.
When Breuer showed himself to have reservations about various ideas promulgated by Freud, particularly those impinging on the realms of sexuality and so on, Freud took umbrage, and I would read it as Freud having engineered, in effect, a falling out between them.
Freud's theorizing about the sexual origins of mental illness was scandalous to polite society.
I think Freud was very brave in his emphasis on sex. He pointed out something that needed to be pointed out, which is that Victorian culture was, at least in its formal sense, very prudish sexually, and distorted human relations through, the way that sex was ignored or suppressed or limited, and that lots of odd things went on around the edges in terms of human behavior to avoid those prescriptions, and lots of behavior was the result of shame and family conflict and so on that revolved around sex.
Okay, I'm in my kitchen making a meal, and I'm dressed in this little T-shirt and jeans, and this older man comes in my apartment, and he tells me I'm dressed inappropriately. I feel very embarrassed. He then gets on the floor, and he tries to make love to me. I get very scared and very upset, and I run out the apartment, down the stairs as he's after me. I'm now on the street, and I'm trying to call my boyfriend, but he's not there, so I'm still very scared, and I run downtown to my girlfriend's house. But she's not there. She just got married and gone on her honeymoon. I feel unsafe, and I feel I have nowhere to go, and then I woke up.
Freud could find a sexual reading for almost any image that occurs in dreams. It is this emphasis on sexuality for which he has been most criticized.
Freud simply thought that this criticism was wrong, and contributions from other fields, including anthropology and art history and literary criticism, have in fact shown the ubiquity of sexual themes in all of human thought.
Freud tended to look for sexual symbols, and he tended to find them. Although, for him, the most important element, at least as he describes it in the interpretation of dreams, is not the appearance of an object. Pointy object means phallic. A round object with a hole means a woman's genitals. That's not his best style of interpretation. His Freudian style of interpretation is to ask the question, what is this doing in the dream? What does it mean for the dreamer? The dreamer gives significance to the symbols.
Before the rift between Breuer and Freud, Breuer introduced Freud to Dr. Wilhelm Fliess, who was to become his confidant. Freud and Fliess were both insiders and outsiders, highly trained Jewish doctors working beyond the frontiers of accepted medicine.
They were obviously very, very close. The fact that they lived in different cities, Vienna and Berlin, allowed them to correspond, and at the same time, almost paradoxically, prevented them getting too close, or one might better say, seeing too much of the truth about one another.
For years, the two men corresponded regularly, exchanging ideas, thoughts, and findings. But their relationship also turned sour. In 1903, the two men met for the last time.
Fliess by then had every good reason to suspect Freud's ingenuousness, to fear that Freud was intent on plagiarizing him, or, more bluntly, stealing from Fliess a theory of bisexuality, which by then Fliess had been working on for nearly 4 years. And Fliess declined the invitation to go on this hiking exhibition, convinced that Freud had a plan to lure him to his death.
Freud confessed,
"An intimate friend and hated enemy have always been necessary requirements of my emotional life."
Loss and loneliness seemed to play a large part in the life of Sigmund Freud. He was mourning his father, who died in 1896, while he was writing the interpretation of dreams.
This book has a subjective significance for me personally, a significance which I only grasped after I had completed it. It was, I found, a portion of my own self-analysis, my reaction to my father's death. That is to say, to the most important event, the most poignant loss of a man's life.
Many of the dreams and the interpretation of dreams that he discusses, and many of the themes that he discusses, are dreams and themes about how do you live with loss? How do you make sense of the past when elements of the past are going to disappear from your life, and how do you retain them in some form that's meaningful?
Mothers and fathers play a huge role in Freudian analysis. Although he changed his mind a number of times about specifics, Freud was certain that boys' and girls' relationships to their parents were crucial to development, sexually and psychically.